Good evening all, and welcome. Tonight for you I have an absolutely chilling collection of paranormal scary stories. I would also like to wish Manda and Paolo Mariano a very happy birthday. But for now, it's time to get comfortable and let the darkness take control. This incident happened around 4 years ago in the year of 2022. My fiancé and I were 2 months away from getting hitched, had a decent job, a good home, and both the original Steam Deck and Elden Ring had been re-released. Life was good, and I had a lot more free time than I do now, since as of then we didn't have kids yet. About a month out from my wedding date, my mum had called me up to ask if I could house sit for her. She was working for a small tech company and was being sent out of state for a big convention to promote the brand. It would only be about 5 days, and taking care of her place would be easy since her home was very small. Basically involved clean up after myself, to watch her 2 small dogs, to take out the trash, and relax after I got back from work. My mum lived in a retirement community at the time, as she was just at the minimum age, so I knew it would be quite a quiet ordeal. When the day came, I packed up my Steam Deck, my ease to transport Series S, regretted that as soon as I had Elden Ring on my PlayStation, and man, I was hurting for more of that, extra clothes and my pistol. Yes, the last one might be an overreaction. It's a retirement community and should be safe. But there had been reports of break-ins in the housing district a few blocks over, and it's always better safe than sorry. So the first 2 days came and went, and it was pretty sweet. Go to work, play with her mutts, play Dark Souls 2 SOTFS on my Steam Deck to fill the void where Elden Ring had been, and chill out with friends online. When it came to bedtime, I would keep the TV on and have some Mike Burn Fire or TFS gaming playing in the background. I have difficulty relaxing in a home that isn't mine, and the videos help put me at ease. During my stay, I had chosen to sleep on my mum's couch in the living room, while Mum had offered me her room. I declined as there were 2 things holding me back from that. The first reason that she preferred to use no animal cruelty homegrown recipes for a lot of things, which included her laundry detergent. I respect that's what she wants, but it leaves her sheets with this sickly sweet odor that runs hell on my sinuses and makes my skin prickle. The other was that I genuinely felt uncomfortable in her room, like a sense of foreboding. When I got close to it, she had been living in her home for about 8 months at that point, and ever since she moved in, I had felt weird about the room. I could never give a reason as to why or how to describe the feeling from earlier times. I remember when she was renovating the home, she recruited me to build furniture and mount the closet bars in her bedroom. It was a nice sunny day, the curtains were open, and my mum was blaring her music in the kitchen as she painted. By all accounts, there should have been nothing for me to feel anxious about, but the entire time I was making her makeup desk and bed frame, I felt this immense pressure in my gut and a sense of unease, like something wasn't right, or I was doing something wrong. I pushed it to the side, but every time I got near the room after that, it would leave me feeling reluctant to go further. I wasn't sure why I felt this way. Even back then I did believe in the paranormal, but something like that didn't really strike me as something her tiny house could have. Either way, I never really questioned it, since she loved her home and slept well pretty much every night in that same room. Plus, it's not like I lived there, so I put that concern in the back of my mind. As long as my mum is safe and happy, that's good enough for me. For a quick reference, I'll give you an idea of how my mum's house was set up. The living room was in the far north, kitchen in the middle, and the hallway with the bathroom after that. And finally, her bedroom was in the south. If you sat on the couch at the end of the living room and looked to your left, you would be able to see about half of her bedroom doorway, and I'd measure it was about maybe 20 to 25 feet from the couch to her bedroom. Again, tiny house. Now, the first 2 days of house sitting had gone great. I love my mum's dogs, the house had great air conditioning, and I had some good food. But then we came to day 3. Same schedule as the last couple of days. Got to work, get back by 3 p.m, decide to grab some pizza from the local RXR, and game till 10 while I flirt with my fiancé on the phone. Cuddle up with the mutts on the couch and sleep, with the TV playing something on YouTube. Now, one thing to note, I had my pistol wedged in the cushion underneath my pillow. As many of you probably point out, this was overkill or very unsafe, but with the aforementioned break-ins, I really wanted to have it within his arm's reach and out of sight of any potential burglars. I have decent reflexes and trained with it often back then, so if there was some trouble, I was confident pulling it out would be no issue. Now this night, I fell asleep after a few episodes of Dragon Ball Z, and I slipped into a blank dream. It was mostly just grey surroundings and muffled noise, like I usually do, but the dream shifted. Grey nothing soon cleared up to the view of my mum's house, in the exact same position I had fallen asleep in. I was laying down on the couch, facing the direction of her room. The dream was clear. I could see her kitchen, the dining room table, and even swear I saw the flashes of the TV playing. I just stared for a bit, in that weird state between consciousness and sleep, as I idly wondered if I was awake or not. I'm not a lucid dreamer, and have never had sleep paralysis, so this was strange for me. But then I noticed something. At the end of the hall, at the bedroom door. To this day, I don't remember if I had closed it or not, but at this moment it was wide open. There was a man standing at the entrance to her bedroom, just standing and staring at me, whereas the environment around me was crystal clear. This man was obscured in shadow. He was tall and broad-shouldered, standing up almost painfully straight. I couldn't make out any defining features he had, and the best way I could hope to describe him would be a pitch-black clothing store mannequin with small wafts of smoke around him. I don't know how long I stared at this man, as he stared back at me. I didn't feel any immediate fear, as I was chalking that up to my mind telling me I might still be dreaming. But after a few moments passed, I realized 2 things. The TV was crystal clear, with Vegeta getting his arm broken by Android 18. The sound wasn't muffled, was nothing like my usual dreamscape, where the noise is just staticky nonsense. The next sensation was what made me realize something was wrong. Subconsciously, I could feel my hand tighten around my pistol. I don't even remember sliding my hand down to reach for it, but I felt myself becoming far more lucid and aware after I felt the grip in my hand. The second I felt my fingers wrap around the handle of my gun, the man at the end of the hall ran at me in a dead sprint. He ran through the hallway wall, and in less than a second he would have been on me. Fear and adrenaline hit my system like a freight train, and while I couldn't stop the scream that erupted from my mouth, I was grateful that my body reacted faster than I expected, sitting up and pointing the barrel of the gun right where this terrifying thing was running. But by the time I had sat up, he was gone. He was just gone, like he was never there to begin with. I sat there for who knows how long, just feeling my heart hammering in my chest as the poor dogs had been jolted awake by my sudden motion and were all giving me confused looks. I sat there with the pistol outstretched, my fingers still remaining idly on the trigger. Thankfully, I had enough control of myself to not have pulled it, and wondering if any of it was real. After a few moments of tense silence, broken up by the background video, I finally stood up, keeping my pistol aimed down the hall. It might seem silly to pull a 9mm on a ghost or spirit, but I wasn't really thinking of that at the time. My mum's door was wide open, and again I wasn't sure if I had closed it. I then turned on all the lights in the living room and kitchen, but did not dare to take one step towards the hallway. Sitting back down, I looked to see it was around midnight, less than 2 hours of sleep, and more than 6 hours before I needed to leave for work. So I resigned myself to sit on the couch with the dogs and stare at the darkened hallway. While the lights were on, I could not stop my heart from hammering or the worry ebbing in my chest. I didn't see the thing again after that night, and I tried just to drown it out with DBZA, which didn't work so well. I'll be honest, I don't even remember how I got back to sleep that night. I just remember petting the pups as I watched TV, and the next thing I know I was waking up at 6 a.m. I opted not to take a shower that day, since it was right next to the bedroom. I did have to go out the door that was also right next to the room though, and I felt the same sense of foreboding. That entire day at work, the experience stayed with me. I kept debating with myself whether it was a dream or real, who the hell it had been, and if I wanted to go back to that home. I knew I couldn't bring the dogs with me since they didn't get along with my own mutts. I knew that someone had to be there for them, especially if something strange was going on. I hated the idea. But my stay was only for 2 more days, which only made me more concerned for my mum. I was there temporarily. She would have to live there with that thing. On the second to last and final nights, I decided to keep every light on. When I got home, I ventured into the hallway and my mum's room to turn on those lights as well. Since it was still daylight, I felt a little braver to do so. The rest of the day passed fast, and night settled in. I didn't get to sleep until well past midnight. My body was too full of nerves. I didn't play games or listen to music or even talk to my friends or fiancé. I just kept the TV on and kept glancing at her bedroom fully alert. While my sleep wasn't great, thankfully nothing happened that night. With that, thankfully an eventful night, the last day went about the same, and I packed up my stuff and headed to work. During my lunch break, I called my mum since I knew she was returning, and told her flat out what had happened, how the guy looked, and how at this point I was sure it was real. My mum is pretty religious, and has claimed she's experienced some paranormal events herself, so it wasn't hard to convince her. She was freaked out by the idea, but decided to reach out to the previous owner of her little home to ask some questions. The lady who owned the house previously was casual with her answers. She talked about her husband and how they had been married and bought the home several years ago. When Mum asked her if he had passed away in the home, the previous owner confirmed it, a little too cheerily according to my mother. Apparently, the guy had died of a heart attack in the bedroom, pretty violent cardiac arrest. I don't know if all of it was mentioned in the initial sale, but my mum can glance over the details. And with that, my mum wasn't happy. While she herself had never encountered this strange ghost in her time living there, she did not like the idea of sharing a home with him. This part might make you laugh, but rather than call for an exorcist or using crosses and holy water-coated bullets to try and purify her home, she basically just prayed really hard. Her faith is strong, and I'm guessing it was enough for the guy. Either he left, or the prayer chilled him out because my mum never saw him. I babysat for her a second time a few months later, and I didn't see any sign of him. Whether praying really hard or not actually worked, I cannot say. But even then, I still get a sense of foreboding every time I go close to her bedroom, so it's hard to say what's going on in that home. My wife eventually got pregnant with our first child, and we did a contingent sale to get a new home, one with about an acre of land. Mum sold her home and got a small house near ours so she could see her grandkids whenever she wished. And that's where we all sit today, thankfully, without any more paranormal experiences. About 10 years ago, I was working with another man in a huge federal facility. We were both engineers, and we were monitoring some tests together. It was about time for him to go to lunch, so I told him to take his time. About 45 minutes later, he came back and started talking to me about what his wife had packed him for lunch. This was just ordinary small talk. Then he got up, patted me on the back, and said he had to take care of some things. I didn't ask any questions, I just told him to go ahead. A little while later, senior staff walked into the room. The facility is under a mountain and basically functions like a small city in Maryland. The senior staff manager, who was an active colonel, came over to me and said, "I'm sorry, I have some bad news for you." He told me that my work partner had died of a heart attack and literally dropped dead. I looked at him like he was mistaken and said, "Sir, there must be some misunderstanding. He was just here 5 minutes ago." That's when I was told he had died at the lunch table. I was disturbed and honestly could not believe it. In fact, they took me to the hospital because I was so shaken up. It was really him, and I figured maybe he had just wanted to say goodbye. I went to the wake and spoke to his wife, but decided not to tell her what had happened. In my mind, I just thought, let him tell you himself. This is a true story, and whenever I reflect on it, it always makes me feel strange. When I was 9, I was in the old house I used to live in when I had an experience that sticks with me. I remember clearly feeling someone breathe and whisper right in my ear. I was alone, and it happened so suddenly that it left me frozen. Even before that, when I was around 6 to 8 years old, I used to hear a female voice laughing from the center of my room while I was hiding under my covers in the middle of the night. I did not dare move or make a sound. When I was 10, I heard something from the closet in my current house. It was a female voice saying, "Mummy." I was home alone at the time, and the closet has a small storage space behind it. There were old child mats back there, and we eventually removed them after my grandmother said she heard a ball scraping around inside. There had been a Christmas donation ball back there before, which made the whole thing even stranger. As time went on, especially around late 2023 and into 2024, my family started having dreams about demons every time the end of the year got close. I had dreams like that too. In one of them, I was paralyzed but knew I was dreaming, and something weird crawled over me in the dark. When I woke up, I was in the exact same position, and I was not paralyzed anymore. My nightlight was also off, even though I was sure it had been on when I went to sleep. I had another dream where I went downstairs and my whole family was there. We were all talking about demons and trying to draw something away from us. It felt so real that even after waking up, it stayed with me. Then, in February and March of 2025, things got worse. Whenever I took a daytime nap, about 5 minutes after falling asleep, I would feel something pushing me down by my head and hip. It would get so strong that I couldn't open my eyes or speak. I could only move my feet and fingers. I was fully awake when it happened, and it kept going on for 2 or 3 weeks straight. Then one morning at around 5 a.m. it happened again, but this time something with 4 legs walked across my back and onto my pillow. I heard it crunch down and feel its weight before it disappeared. It did not move. The only thing I could say was, "Dad?" because I felt safer knowing my father was just down the hall. After that, It stopped once I got online access again and had friends to talk to and distractions to focus on. It was like once I was less isolated and less paranoid, the worst of it backed off. My father has told me he went through strange things too when he was a kid. He said he experienced crazy stuff in a house he used to live in, and also in a hotel room that he thought was haunted. He and his brother were alone in that room, and he thought their father had come through one door and gone to the bathroom. But their actual father came through the other door because the room had 2 entrances. When they went down to the lobby, the owner told them that someone had died by taking their life in that room, and that was the reason it was haunted. They were moved to a different room, or even a different hotel after that. So now I keep wondering whether what I have experienced is normal, just imagination, or something more. It does not always feel like a coincidence, especially because so many of the experiences happened in different places and at different ages, but I still don't know what to make of it. Olympic National Forest, 2021 to 2025. During one of the most turbulent times of my life, when I was barely holding on to who I was, I felt like everything was falling apart. I cursed the universe, yet strange, unexplainable things began to happen. Green pulsating orbs started to show up, faces in the trees and materializing out of nowhere, interaction with entities. I do try to rationalize, analyze, and come to logical reasoning before jumping to this or that. This is just where it has led me. I've never been one to follow any crowd. I tend to go against it and have a strong dislike for the government. I strive for freedom, and there is no bandwagon for me to jump on. A mountain man trying to make sense of the world. No angle, just putting it out there. So, 5 months before the accident, I was ready to put a bullet in my head. I closed my eyes, thought of my children, thought of my animals eating my corpse, and put my finger on the trigger and the barrel to my temple. When I got a phone call, I ignored it at first, but then opened my eyes to see it was my mother, someone I hadn't spoken to in years, and we weren't on good terms. Something told me to answer it, and so I did. She convinced me not to, but even now, the thought crosses my mind daily. On September 18th, 2021, at 11:20 p.m., I died after a heart attack caused by a blood clot in my arm. It broke loose, led to a pulmonary embolism, and triggered grand mal seizures. I saw the other side, and I can say without hesitation, it's better than the constant grind I face here. Consciousness still intact, a few months later, I had a stroke. 2 weeks after that, I ended up getting sepsis from MRSA, a death sentence for half the people who get it, but somehow I survived. Before all of that, I had spinal surgery from a back that blew in 3 places while I tried to keep my house afloat, worked 3 jobs from 4 a.m. to midnight every day a year, divorce court and child custody court with 2 girls hell-bent on destroying my life, and being dad just became too much, and my body and mind simply couldn't take it. 9 days after my heart attack, I was forced into homelessness. I had to sell the house I bought on my own, and most of the proceeds went to my ex-wife. A man's life destroyed for a 2-week shopping spree. I managed to get a motorhome, but had nowhere to park it. For a year I stayed on a mountain in Rainier, Oregon, until I found this place in Hoodsport. Getting up the driveway was a nightmare. I was stuck, tipping sideways for 6 days at a 40-degree angle before I finally made it up. Then came the snow. That winter was brutal. My Jeep was repossessed in December, but I got a truck the following January. It didn't last. The engine blew the same month, and by February the government drained my bank account balance to zero, something that they aren't supposed to do. Stranded in 4 feet of snow for 9 months, I ended up with frostbite on my feet. I would collapse face down in the snow from sheer exhaustion and pray for a death that never came. Use my clothes, a branch, and gasoline to fashion a torch to travel at night. I had my run-ins with a cougar just a day prior, and around this time was when I saw the first green, pulsating orb appear at night. I finally replaced the truck in August, only for the government to take my license away. I couldn't legally drive anyway. Then came my accident in September. One night, in the pitch-black forest outside in a remote area in the Olympic National Forest, sitting on my porch alone, I switched on my flashlight, and there was a distinct outline of a woman's face, maybe 2 feet in diameter. It felt like she didn't want to be seen. She was camouflaged, see-through like invisible, so perfectly with her surroundings that for a moment I thought I'd imagined her. But she was undeniably there when I turned it back on. Her face was clear, her eyes closed, and on her forehead were 3 distinct dots, arranged in an upwards triangle, 2 at the bottom and 1 above. I felt there was a meaning to it, though I couldn't fully connect it, but I have since seen the symbol showing up on alien abduction documentaries, spiritual circles, and ancient folklore. Doubting my own eyes, I turned the light off, took a second to steady myself and switched it back on. She was still there, just as vivid as before. This wasn't a vision or a trick of the mind, it was something real, something I was truly seeing. I'm not religious and don't believe in God in any traditional sense. I approach life as it comes, trusting only what I experience firsthand. I pray to the universe, stay connected to nature, and rely on what resonates. Strangely, this sighting brought me to Bhuvaneshwari, a goddess in Indian culture who is known to appear in times of chaos, the exact state I was in. She is referred to as the mother of the universe, the mother of nature, and that felt aligned with how I tried to live. I read that she's invited by candles, incense, and a peaceful setting, things I include in my nightly meditation. I don't pray to any religion, as it's man-made. I pray to the universe and feel connected to nature. Ironically, I don't know if it's her or not for certain, I've been trying to find information on what I saw. I couldn't find anything that matched her description or anything relevant about the mark she bore, but things with the Hindu goddesses matched. As far as I know, she could have been real, or something else entirely. There was a 911 call from someone who had fallen on the mountain I reside on, and the EMTs lost their signal, so I volunteered to search since I knew the mountain, and was able to utilize my 6x6 ATV in areas they could not. While searching for the person, I tried to maneuver away from a cliff, but slowly started tipping, and it was too late. As I was going off the side of the cliff, I tried to jump off the vehicle while in free fall. I ended up underneath it before I hit the ground on sharp, jagged rocks, and was immediately crushed by it after impact. I was stuck between a vehicle and a rock, with my body in a U-shape, but against the way a body bends. On my side, my arms were still free, but I couldn't move or get the vehicle off, which was still running, and the hot engine was burning my hip. I was trapped. I could tell my bones were broken without having to see, especially my leg, but couldn't tell if there were more at the time. I laid there pinned for several hours, screaming in agony while in shock, trying with all my might to lift the 6x6 ATV off, eventually becoming dehydrated and exhausted from sweating out all the water in my body too. My screams became more of a croak. This was all during daylight, at about 5 p.m., and I wasn't even discovered until about 10 by a man and his young son who didn't even know why they were there at that time, but they heard my screams and decided to investigate. They were able to lift the ATV off my body, but I still couldn't move, so they left me there to get help from the EMT that was already in the area. Only I was deep on the mountain. All I could do was try to position my leg where the pain was less, which was difficult because I had 3 pieces of it to try and line up. It was like a wet noodle dangling and dragging on the rock. About an hour and a half goes by and I begin to hear animals somewhere around me, so I pulled the 1911 from my chest and fired a shot to scare them away from my body broken on the rocks. Nature dark is a whole nother kind of dark. There's no light from anywhere, and I couldn't see anything, not even my hand in front of my face. I cannot deny, at that moment I considered using a bullet on myself. But a short time later, I see the headlights of this guy's truck and the paramedic shortly behind. They were able to put the pieces of my leg in a splint and were going to call a life flight helicopter to get me to Seattle. But I told them I would make it to the hospital in the ambulance and couldn't afford a helicopter. They informed me it wasn't about that, more so getting me to a place where they were capable of handling my injuries that were now developing compartment syndrome and at risk of amputation. That's when I knew I was messed up. So one ambulance drove me to another and I was transferred to a park off the mountain. The local hospital managed just fine. I got there around midnight, still without pain medication and in agony. I had several injections of pain medication when I got there and was in raw pain for what felt like an eternity. Even though I was severely dehydrated, I still couldn't have water because I was about to have surgery after the x-rays of my chest, pelvis, left side and both legs along with my hand. The x-ray picked up 3 fractures, but the surgeon found another while he was working on my leg for a total of 4. My plateau, kneecap, was broken clean through horizontally. My fibula, tibia, and my ankle were all broken. My leg was shattered. The rest of my body was also injured, but not to that extent. I ended up getting a plate on my knee, one on my ankle, and a titanium rod along the fib and tib connecting them. I needed 40 stitches and a double physiotomy about a foot long on both sides of the leg, one upper, one lower, in order to fix it. No one knew what happened until a few days later. I didn't have my phone on me. I was in the ER for a week and then transferred to a rehab facility for a little over a month. I had to be in a wheelchair and I'm unable to walk without crutches or a cane. The rehab center wouldn't release me because I didn't have anywhere else to go. My motorhome in the wilderness wasn't safe apparently, and when I arrived home, my place had been overrun by mice. Evidence in my bed, which I had no choice but to be in with a broken leg, and no working vehicle or cash. I had asked if they ever found the person. They did. It created a lot of additional hardship for me, but I needed it to happen, I guess. I was in the forest, working on a path to a spot where I planned to build an outbuilding. There's a stream nearby, fed by a spring on the property, and in this area, I noticed a peculiar hole in the ground. It looked like the entrance to a cave, with a tunnel running horizontally from a vertical hole about 2 feet in diameter next to a tree I had previously cut down. I decided to dig a ditch to direct water into a dip in the ground, hoping to create a small pool in front of the outbuilding. As the water flowed in, the ground suddenly opened up, forming a large hole. The water poured in like a waterfall, insects flew out, and a nasty smell filled the air. I realized this hole was connected to the cavernous hole I'd seen earlier. I tried to fill it in with logs, rocks, and dirt to stop the water flow, and as night started to get closer, I decided to check another spot upstream in a place I'll call my sanctuary. It's a beautiful area where I've been building a natural pool next to some waterfalls. While I was there, I noticed something black darting between the trees above me, up the slope to the right. I dismissed it as nothing. I knew I saw something though. As I turned my head forward, I found myself surrounded by invisible, translucent humanoid forms. They resembled the cloaked creature from the Predator movie. I had seen one of these entities before, the previous winter while watching a cabin here on the mountain. That time, it was accompanied by a pulsating green orb and felt friendly. But this encounter was different, more intense. While having a broken leg, I wasn't in a position for much. My dog became alert, tail straight, and began chasing something into the forest. Thinking she might have spotted a cougar or bear, I pulled my sidearm and followed her with my eyes towards the cave. Oddly, I didn't think much of it at the time, but the unease in the air was undeniable. I didn't like how these entities made me feel. When it became overwhelming, I left for home. I opened the frozen window behind my couch to smoke. The unease I felt earlier returned in full force as soon as light fell, and suddenly I heard loud branches breaking on either side of my house, close to the forest line. I knew it was them. They seemed to move through the trees effortlessly, undetectable except for the sound. I fired a shot with my rifle towards the left in the hillside to see if the branches would move away from the house or stop, but it had no effect. The sounds continued, about 6 breaks every 10 minutes for hours. I closed the window, but the breaking branches persisted, and I felt trapped and powerless. Tapping on the side of the house began what sounded like metal. That night I couldn't sleep. I started researching what I had seen while this was occurring, and was horrified to learn that these entities are real. Many people have reported encounters with beings referred to as Glimmerman or Predator, tied to mysterious disappearances documented in missing 411 cases. These cases involve people vanishing without explanation in wilderness areas, often near bodies of water or cave systems, which is where I happened to live. As I delved deeper, I found eerie connections. I watched videos of people describing similar translucent beings and felt an overwhelming sense of fear. Tears filled my eyes as I realized the gravity of what I had encountered. For 3 weeks after that night, I didn't venture more than 20 feet from my house, and only briefly, never at night. The area was hit hard by a blizzard with temperatures plummeting to 10 degrees, and during this time I came across a video where someone described hearing what sounded like a T-Rex walking the ground, shaking branches, an experience eerily similar to what I had heard during the summer, and only in the summer I heard these stomps. Another researcher shared maps showing the overlap of distances, cave systems, and national forests. The alignment was striking, and my home wasn't in the middle of it, but described my living environment to a T. As night became day, I ventured outside and found broken branches, thick, healthy ones, still attached to the tree, directly in view of the window where I had been standing. My heart sank, but I wasn't surprised. A circle scratched in the ground about 2 inches wide around the house. Under the truck, a face appeared in a tree that wasn't there before, and it's still there. I could feel things around me, but couldn't see. I would call out into the woods to speak to it, bargain with it. The months following brought me hardship. My truck broke down yet again, my ATV became unusable, and I was stranded in the wilderness, only this time my leg was broken. Meanwhile, I began connecting the dots between these experiences and other strange occurrences. Objects disappearing or being moved in unnatural ways, green pulsating orbs, and the overwhelming sense of being watched. Branches planted like trees, things left in garden beds, and the energy felt childlike, as if it wanted to be friends. I didn't move these objects. I left them alone. I've always had experiences with the paranormal, things that defy explanation. From my earliest memories to now, encounter with cryptids and otherworldly phenomena have been a recurring theme in my life. However, the events of the last 2 years on this mountain have been the most intense and transformative. It's been restless. I've lost my mind somewhere in the chaos, and finding peace almost feels impossible. Perhaps I deserve this. I know I wasn't a good person in my younger years. I did a lot of bad things I never shared because no one would believe me. But I've seen what life can do sometimes. I've been hardened by it. I don't fear death, I face it. This has been the theme of my existence since birth, and this was just the last 3 years. I somehow felt the accident was in the hands of the woman I saw. For some reason, I knew it was a good thing and to get me back on my path. Except only to keep enduring. It's a never-ending battle of life and death, and always has been. I have always been sensitive to the paranormal. My third eye opened when I was very young. My earliest memory is from when I was about 5 years old, talking to a little boy my age at my grandma's house. We would often play with Lego and build blocks together, and my grandma even has an old recording of me chatting away to someone in my room. When she peeked around the corner, there was no one else with me, yet the Legos were shifting on the ground. In the video, she asked who I was talking to, and I told her it was my new friend, and the video cut off right after that. But she remembers questioning me about what I meant. Not long after that incident, the paranormal activity in our house spiked. Everyone started experiencing things. Even my grandpa, who was deeply Catholic, admitted to seeing a child running around the house and a tall, medium-built man following me around while I was outside doing chores. The summer before 6th grade, I went through a very traumatic experience with a malevolent entity I'd rather not go into details about. I only remember that it would come into my room and hang itself in my doorway or under my loft bed. After that, I began struggling with severe mental health issues. My mum, grandpa, and uncle thought I was imagining things or making them up. My family knew I was sensitive, and that strange things had happened around me before, but they never really believed the darker side of it. Eventually I broke down and told my grandma how bad the things I was seeing and feeling and hearing had gotten. She finally believed me and reached out to a psychic medium, her friend, for help. That medium helped me close my third eye, and for a long time I had no issues or experiences. Fast forward to many years later, my fiancé and I moved in together, and since then we've been dealing with constant negative paranormal experiences. Pots, pans, and utensils have been thrown at us. We've both felt something trying to pull us down the basement steps. We can't put smoke alarms in the house, or else they'll just screech even after being replaced or putting new batteries in. My fiancé has heard a man talking upstairs while he was alone in the house. I have dropped in on our Alexa many times to check on the cats and heard people talking, then nothing but silence, and we have both heard footsteps going up and down the stairs like someone was pacing. While we were on vacation in New York, my mum and grandma stayed at our house to cat sit. One night, my mum called, panicked, saying she'd heard screaming coming from the basement, and sent us a photo of a handprint on the outside glass of one of our windows. When we returned home, my grandma left a note for us. She'd heard a dog howling inside and around our house, even though none of our neighbors have dogs and the neighborhood is normally silent. Ever since then, things have only gotten worse. Something has been pulling our cat's tails. Candles refuse to stay lit. When I go upstairs, I hear the doors opening and closing, yet when I come back down, both deadbolts are still latched. One morning, I found my engagement ring, a pair of earrings, and 2 necklaces scorched. All after sitting untouched in my jewelry box overnight. I already tried so many different ways to cleanse and protect our home, but nothing seemed to work. I've smudged every single room multiple times and firmly asked and even demanded whatever it is to leave. I've meditated and tried to release any negative emotions I might be carrying, hoping it would help clear the energy. I've placed bowls in nearly every corner of the house, filled with black tourmaline, sage, and selenite. I wear sage, onyx, and black sapphire daily, and I've lined all of our doorways with salt for protection. My fiancé has done the same, and he's even performed several banishing and protection spells. But despite all of these efforts, the activity hasn't stopped or lessened. If anything, it feels like it's getting worse as time goes on. Recently, I reached back out to the same psychic medium. She told me to stop what's happening and that I may need to reopen or unblock my third eye and perform a cleansing to remove any attached negative energy. But honestly, I'm terrified. I don't want to open myself up to these experiences again. I just want all of this to stop. I'm scared to sleep in the house alone. Every time I go into the kitchen, I can hardly breathe from panic. My cats have become so clingy they barely leave our sides. That sounds great, but they will scream and cry for hours after we leave, and even some of my friends who've witnessed very few of these things refuse to come over anymore. So here I am, asking for any and all advice anyone can offer. I'm open to almost anything within reason. I just want peace in our home again, even if that means doing something that scares the living daylights out of me. Thank you all so much for your guidance. All advice is appreciated more than you know. It was October of 2010, and a group of us who were still in high school decided to go ghost hunting after being inspired by a few professional groups some of us knew about. We wanted to get some proof, mostly through EVP and photos, so we drove about an hour to a famous Civil War battleground in Georgia. By the time we got there, it was dark and a little chilly, and about 8:30 p.m. We started walking down some abandoned railroad tracks that we found nearby while we talked. Then, all at once, I noticed a cool spot. Maybe because of the elevation, and I got the idea to ask everyone to be quiet so I could try speaking to any ghosts in the area. We kept walking in silence while I tried asking simple questions like, "If you're here, make it known to us," or "Make a noise," or "Show us." While I was talking, I was also taking pictures. I must have taken about 10. Then, after looking at one of them that I had just taken and starting the next question, I froze halfway through my sentence, because I had caught something that definitely had not been in there before. I zoomed in and saw what looked like the back of a large person standing away from us. But for some reason, the figure appeared to be headless. I immediately told the others what might be with us, and all that teenage adrenaline kicked in. We all sprinted back to the car. As we drove back, I thought I could make out something else on the right side, though it was very faint. When we got home, I opened the image in my old 2010 photo editor and cranked up the exposure and contrast. When I enhanced the picture, the figure on the left looked a lot clearer. I would really love to know if anyone has taken any photography like this. Until about 3 hours ago, I did not believe in the paranormal. My workplace was called haunted by my coworkers, but they like to mess with new hires, so I assumed they were lying. I also went over a year without witnessing anything out of the ordinary. This changed today when I worked my first closing shift of the summer. I'm not going to go into the full details, as this isn't a particularly unique or interesting encounter, but I work the closing shift to small business in a very old building. At least 2 people have passed away inside the building over the years. My co-workers have described there being some bad energy there. However, I chalked it up to the building's poorly maintained interior, as I think scary-looking places tend to create scary vibes. I tend to assume most anomalies are psychological, likely related to sleep deprivation or auditory hallucinations because we work pretty late into the night. Today, I was closing by myself while my manager was sweeping the front of the lobby. I went alone to clean the bathrooms at the back of the building. The first odd thing I noticed was that all the faucets had been turned on, despite me having used the bathroom while the building was closed to the public. I never leave the faucets running, and I know for a fact I didn't touch both of them as I had no reason to do so. They are not automatic and are operated by turning a knob to switch on the water, so this couldn't have been a technological fluke or an accident. The really upsetting part occurred when I entered the stall room to sweep. Our stalls have actual wooden doors with no gaps, and they sit slightly ajar when unoccupied. I went to open the first stall and sweep, and the door to the second stall beside me was aggressively pulled shut from the inside. These doors are pulled closed. You can only close the door by either pulling it shut from the inside or causing it to slam behind you by swinging it open aggressively as you leave. Again, nobody was present in the hallway to do either of these. The handle also visibly tilted, as if it were being grabbed by a hand before the door was pulled shut. It didn't lock, which I found very strange, if it truly was a person trying to use the bathroom. Plus, all customers had left and were accounted for by checking the camera footage. My manager was out front the whole time. There are no AC vents in this section of the building. Remember, it's super old, and nothing available to create a draft. It is also at the end of a dead-end hallway, so nobody could have snuck past, and the CCTV cameras verified that my manager and I were the only people still present. I immediately felt a sense of dread, unlike anything I've ever experienced. I genuinely had to take deep breaths because I thought I was going to pass out or be sick. We have a large unhoused population around my workplace, so my first thought was that someone had snuck into the building and was trying to use the bathroom. My manager and I sweep the entire building, even checking the literal roof hatch for signs of disturbance, and found absolutely nothing. I don't consider myself spiritually open. However, my intuition rarely lies, and this sense of fear honestly felt distinct from anything I've ever experienced. A person couldn't possibly sneak in without being detected on our cameras, as we have one on every entry and exit point. I do not want to interact with ghosts, and I also don't know how to tell if this is a malevolent entity or not. My upbringing was within the Catholic Church, so anything possibly paranormal makes me irrationally anxious. I don't really like this, and I feel super unsettled. I am genuinely debating quitting my job because of this. I seriously cannot explain it, and I do not want to open myself up to future experiences. So in summary, I would really appreciate any advice, if that is even possible, on how to close myself off to paranormal energies, as I am super worried about attachment. Ever since I was little, I have seen strange things like shadows and other things I could never quite explain. I was always scared, so I ignored it and told myself I was imagining things. But about a year ago, everything started getting worse. I moved into a new apartment, and after about 6 months, my boyfriend and I started noticing what felt like paranormal activity. Things would move on their own, like clothes and toys. I also have 2 cats, and they seemed to react to it. They hiss at empty spaces, chase things that are not there, and rub up against spots where nothing is visible. At first, that did not seem too strange for me, but then I started seeing things face to face. One day, I was walking to the bathroom when a little girl suddenly appeared in front of me. She was transparent but still clearly visible. She was talking to me, but I got scared and ran away. After that, I started seeing what I think were orbs floating around the living room, little glowing spheres moving through the air. My cats would try to catch them, which only made the whole thing feel even stranger. But it is not only harmless things. There are also some things much darker here with us, and I do not know what to do. Over the past year, I have become less afraid and more willing to communicate with the spirits here. What I have learned is that they are not alone, and that there is some kind of demonic entity bothering them and bothering me and my boyfriend too. When one of us is not home, it imitates our voices and calls for us. When I go to sleep, it touches me, and when I try to make it leave, it growls and makes choking noises. I have also noticed that when this demon is standing in the doorway, something drips from it. I can actually see it, a sticky grey liquid that keeps appearing on the walls and won't come off. One time it dripped on me, and it felt like I'd been burnt. The spirits, though, seem to need help. They keep coming to me, and they seem afraid of that thing. Last night, I heard crying in the hallway, the little girl crying really hard. At the same time, I heard growling, choking sounds and loud bangs like things being thrown around. I have this feeling that a little girl is buried in the basement, and that no one knows she's dead. I searched through police databases of missing children and feel like she might be one of them, but I cannot communicate with them clearly enough, and every time I try, I get scared and then can't hear anything anymore. Is there any way I can help these spirits move on? Let me tell you about Iris Memory Care. It's where I took care of my grandma for months in 2023, and I swear, I have never been anywhere that has felt so supernatural. Before I get into it though, I should say that I have literally never done drugs beyond taking weed gummies once from a gas station, and all they did was make me insanely irritated and exhausted. I take no medication, have no history of paranormal experiences, and besides ADD, I do not have any diagnosed mental disorders. I know how unbelievable this sounds, but everything I'm about to describe happened exactly as I remembered it. From the very first day I brought my grandma to Iris, the place felt wrong, in a way I cannot fully explain. Right outside the front entrance, there was a black female staff member I had never met before, but she greeted me like she already knew me. She kept calling me by my first name and immediately telling me things about my grandma, like where she was or what was going on with her. She was also standing outside alone, like she'd been waiting for me to arrive specifically. Inside, the atmosphere felt strange right away. There was one staff member sitting at the table with a resident near the front, and I walked down the hallway in order to find my grandma. Now, at the very end of the hall, there was an elderly female resident who was in a wheelchair, making these bizarre, almost paranormal crying noises. She sounded like she was calling for help. I know this was memory care, and that everyone there has dementia or other serious issues, but this did not feel like a normal confused old person moment. The sound she was making, and the energy in the air around her, there was something deeply disturbing about it. I asked if she needed help, because it really seemed like she did. I went back and told the staff member at the table whose name was Kat, and she went to check. When she came back, she said, "Oh, that's just Jenny. "She's fine." Then her face changed in a way I can only describe as inhuman, and in this weirdly but oddly cute voice she said, "Thanks though, I really appreciate that," while grinning up at me with this unsettling expression. The whole atmosphere still felt supernatural after that. Later that same day, my grandma's physical therapist from her previous assisted living place came by to work with her and then take her for a walk with the walker. At one point, I left them alone for just a minute to get some water. I was within the direct line of sight the entire time, only a short distance from her room, and the room only had one entrance. I grabbed a quick cup of water, walked directly back, and when I looked inside they were gone. That scared me badly, because I knew there had been moments earlier. I checked the bed and bathroom, but they were not there either. I actually jumped and yelled, "No way," because the situation felt physically impossible. I stepped out of the room to look around, and there they were, walking towards me from the exact direction I had just come from, with him guiding her walker as if nothing strange had happened. I felt like they had somehow vanished and reappeared behind me. Another impossible thing happened with a small refrigerator in my grandma's room. For the first few days, from at least Monday to Wednesday, there were just empty spaces in that spot. Then from Wednesday to Thursday, there was a refrigerator there. I asked my grandma if my dad had brought it in that day, but she insisted it had always been there. I assumed it was her dementia, but my dad said the same thing, that it had been there since day one. So I checked the pictures I had taken of her in the room on the first couple of days, and to my horror, the refrigerator was in the photos too. This was an event that made no sense to me. A few days in, I met a new staff member called Angel, who later turned out to be Kat's best friend. On the second or third day, my grandma's little Maltese dog Benji needed to go out. Angel offered to take him, and I gave her the leash. She went outside and came back almost instantly, within about 5 seconds at most. She returned and had this eerie, ethereal quality I still cannot quite articulate. When I asked if he'd gone potty, she said he had, but that still didn't seem possible. There was no way she could have gone out and back that fast, and actually had enough time to do anything. On the 4th day or so, my dad was getting really frustrated with Benji, because the dog was causing a lot of problems for the staff and driving some of the residents crazy with his barks. He asked me to go back after I had already come home and pay me to give the dog some anti-anxiety medication, so I returned to Iris. When I walked in, there was another female staff member on the right side of the entrance who immediately focused on me. She seemed like the manager, just like the first woman who had greeted me on day one. She acted like she already knew me. I explained that I had come to calm down Benji and that he resisted swallowing pills. She said in the most disturbing, inhuman voice change I ever heard, "Well, good luck with that," and laughed like a witch. That stuck with me for the next week or two because I could not understand why this place kept feeling like that. I went to my grandma's room and fought with Benji to get him to take his medicine, but he kept snarling and resisting. At one point it seemed like he was going to bite me, so I finally realized I should just crush the pill and put it into his food, and that worked. After, I left. There were other strange things too. Sometimes I would hear Benji barking inside the room while we were eating in the cafeteria near her room, and then suddenly the barking would stop. When I went back in, he wouldn't be there. Angel had apparently taken him somewhere else. He only lasted a week before the staff had to evict him because he was barking too much and bothering everyone. Eventually my dad gave him away to someone who could care for him properly without telling my grandma. He ended up in a much better home with kids that played with him all the time. There was also this ethereal knocking sound that I heard a few times. It sounded crystal clear, but at the same time it didn't sound real at all, like something from a video game or a recording rather than an actual knock on the door. Even the entrance itself felt strange. After you went in through the outer door, There was another door to stop people from just walking in until staff let them through. You had to ring a doorbell, and the little song it played had this mysterious magical tone that somehow fit the rest of the place perfectly. At this point, Iris almost felt like Hogwarts to me, except it was a memory care facility instead of a school. One day, Angel and I went into my grandma's room, and I asked if I could order a pizza and have my grandma eat it in the room. She wasn't sure and said that she would ask. A few minutes later, I walk out to look for her and turn the corner. She was standing there with Kat, and the two of them were chatting. Then they both noticed me, turned to me at the same time, their faces distorted in this eerie, impossible way, and grinned at me. I kept walking and later asked a higher-up member, who told me my grandma could not eat in the room because they had an ant problem. Another day after I walked into the room, I heard the door magically close and click locked behind me. I knew no one had been there with me. It happened so fast and cleanly that it felt like an obvious trick, except there was no explanation for it. During the second week, I was talking to my grandma for less than an hour when I noticed the time on her clock had somehow jumped 4 or 5 hours ahead. My phone agreed. It was like we had somehow time-traveled to later in the afternoon. That one terrified me even more than the disappearing therapist and walker, because it felt so final and impossible. I ended up leaving, even though I should have been way too early, because we were supposed to stay up there for a few hours, and I had barely been there for an hour. Another time, I passed Angel in the hallway, gave her a side-eye because of all the strange things I had seen around her, and she immediately turned her head, smiled hugely, and said hi before continuing on. At one point in the cafeteria, a staff member told me no one was manning the kitchen and that someone would be back in about an hour. And then within a minute or two, a female with wild red hair appeared almost out of nowhere and asked if I needed help. She got my grandma a meal as if she'd been there the whole time. Later on, I think it was the same woman who had her daughter in the TV area. The little girl was running around and behaving a bit like a child from Monsters, Inc. My grandma knew her, liked her, and thought she was cute. Then there was the air conditioner incident. One day they were supposed to have the maintenance guy come and fix the AC in my grandma's room, but he had still not shown up. Staff kept telling me he would be there. I checked the room, and it was still warm because nothing had been done. Then just as I stepped out of the room, I heard a voice on the TV in the distance say, perfectly on cue, "The maintenance guy's here to save us." Later when I went back, the AC was cold and working again. My grandma was enjoying it, and even though I never saw anyone come to fix it. I know this all sounds insane, but I swear I wish I had recordings of everything, because I understand how crazy it all sounds when you're not there. I hope someone believes me, because if you'd have been there with me, you would have seen it for yourself too. Hey guys, it's Mort here, and thank you so much for listening. I hope you have enjoyed tonight's collection of scary stories, and if of course you did, you can let me know down below. I would like to extend one final special thank you to my amazing members and patrons, whose names you can see on screen. If you join their ranks, you get a really cool bunch of perks, and you can find out more by following the links down below. I think tomorrow we have, yes indeed, some cryptid Skinwalker scary stories. They are really good, and if you would like to receive them earlier than anyone else, you know what to do. And on Friday we have some free hospital stories for you to enjoy as well. But that is it from me guys, until next time, stay awesome and good night.